Hi, welcome to the very first Women Evolution live Q&A session with me, Shavon Lindley, CEO and co-founder. I'm so excited to be here with you today. We're going to dive deep into our first live Q&A. We're going to be doing these twice a month and trying to determine the right and best time for everybody as we are just launching this feature. So the reason why this feature came about is because we always do feedback surveys for all of our participants as they go through the program to find out what they loved, what they would like to see more of, and we're constantly enhancing the program. And the last round of feedback, we received that there was an expectation that I was going to be more involved in the program, and I was, you know, we've always presented this program as being, you know, scalable, cost effective. You can do it at any time. You can watch the videos on your iPad, on your phone. You can download the PDFs. You can print them. You can do them in a very convenient way. You know, we've had an online community for support, but to hear that there really was more that I could be doing that could still be scalable, that could keep the costs low, that would provide hopefully immense value, and doing it in a live Q&A format just really felt really good to me. And to be honest, it's the very first time I've ever considered myself to be a coach. And I know you might be thinking I'm crazy for never having thought that before, but I really honestly hadn't. I've always been behind the scenes, building and growing, building content, working on business development, speaking and traveling, that, you know, I've really been trying to dig deeper into how can we make sure this program has the impact that I know that it can have. And I know that's going to be, it's going to require more. So this is one way that we are rolling out support to you in a more direct contact with me. So we're using Zoom. Zoom is super cool. Make sure that your button is muted. It seems like I have it set up so everybody's muted, so it sounds like everybody has their microphone muted, but there's a chat functionality. So if you want to talk with me, ask me questions, the chat is the perfect way to do it, because I have it up all the time, and if I'm in the middle of a thought, I can wrap that up, I'll check the chat, and we can get to your questions live. If not, I've got tons of stuff to talk about in regards to the very first module in the Women Evolution Online Mentoring Program, and that's owning your purpose, deciding what you want and why. So I usually get a question in regards to, you know, do we really need to do the program, you know, 1 through 6 in chronological order? Is it a linear program? And we were very thoughtful when we were designing the program to do it in this order. And the reason is that you can't own your voice or know when to speak up and when to listen if you don't know what your purpose is. Deciding what you want and why is the foundation for every single one of the other skills, and they all build on top of each other. So, you know, this may be something that you've done a lot of work in. Maybe you already know exactly what you want and you need help with the others, but I urge you to still dig into the material, because there may be some things now that you're at this stage of your career, and if you hear it now at this moment at the right time, it can impact you differently. And so I hope that you'll just come up for the ride, and let's dig into some of the topics. So first, I've got a question. Does anybody know? So I always get this too in feedback, is that the music is very distinctual. Most people like it. Some people are annoyed by it. I think in the next versions of videos we'll make sure there won't be so much of a long intro and exit. We know that. We'll make the videos longer too. What we've heard from all of you is that you want more videos. And so let me tell you, we are working on that right now. It is only going to get better over time. So thank you for your input on that. So, but does anybody know what song is played in the intro and exit of all of the videos? Let's see. Do we have anybody in the chat? Some interesting responses. Okay, so it's Florence and the Machine. Dog Days Are Over is the song. So I am a huge Florence and the Machine fan. And She just represents to me just the epitome of someone who, if you've ever seen her live, she is probably the best show you'll ever see. I mean, she engages with you right away. Her voice is like an angel. She's a powerhouse, like digs into your soul. But at the same time, when she talks about her background and her story, when she is in between songs, she's like this quiet little flower, and she's very, very shy. And it's when she's doing what she loves best that this like beast of a woman comes out of her. And I resonate so much with that. And she lays it all out there and is completely vulnerable. And that's a lot of what we're asking you to do when you go through this, is to kind of be open to a new way of leadership. And so Women Evolution came out of research that I did when I was on ESPN for 3 years as a radio show host. And I interviewed over 150 executives. Now, Women Evolution did not exist at this time. I was just a rising leader in the financial planning industry. I was reaching every career milestone I had ever set out for myself by my mid-20s. I was the top representative in my firm in Southern California within the first 2 years, top rep in the office within the first year and a half. And I was great at it. And I knew nothing about the industry to begin with, but I just worked and I hustled, and I worked with all men. And it was super fun. They were my family. I had just moved to San Diego. I didn't know anybody, so I really plugged in, and we hung out almost every night, and we worked 12-hour days. We worked weekends, and that was really fun for the first few years until my mid-20s roll around. And now I'm overworked. I'm stressed. I'm gaining tons of weight. I think I gained at least 20 pounds. And I was starting to get really, really sick. And sick almost every single month. And my doctor, I wouldn't even have to go in anymore. I'm like, just send the antibiotics to the pharmacy. I'll go pick them up. I got bronchitis again, or whatever it was that was coming up at that time. And so I knew that I wanted to get married. I was dating somebody that I knew I was going to get married to. I wanted to have kids. And I'm like, how is this going to be humanly possible? So I had this back to this radio show. So I was on this show, and it was 5 days a week. And 4 out of the 5 days was financially related. So we talked about financial things. And 1 day a week, we changed the format completely, and was called the CEO Show. And it was when we had an opportunity to dig into executives, mainly CEOs, and just ask them how they were able to figure this out. How are they able to navigate, grow in their company, and build these companies, some from scratch, some moved up from the bottom up. And over time, I started pinpointing, really only interviewing women, because that's who I was looking for. I kept trying to find a female mentor. I had a male mentor in my financial planning career. I know, hands down, that's why I made it as far as I did, as quickly as I did. But in this particular moment, I knew I needed a woman. And I couldn't find anyone. There was nobody that had kids in my, network that was a woman and had reached the same level of success. And so I was craving that female mentorship. So I leveraged the ESPN name, which fortunately opens up a lot of doors. And they're so happy to talk to you because they get to be on this amazing platform, tell their story. And I just sat back and I listened for 3 years, and story by story built my confidence as a woman in business about what I needed in a support structure in order to be able to have a family and a career, and how to understand what it is that I want, how to speak up, all these things, but doing it in a way that was completely different than what I had ever learned before. My father is a business owner, has probably was my first mentor for business, and he was a very aggressive, built his company from absolutely nothing as an Iranian immigrant to the United States with the pursuing of the American dream, and he built his company from nothing, and he did it all on his own. He's aggressive and he's demanding, and he's also very thoughtful, though. And, I really looked at him and emulated his strategies. And what I realized over time was that I had a hard time hiring employees and people working for me because I had just such a high threshold of what I wanted out of other people. And, to be honest, I never really was as great of a leader as I thought I would be, because I was so great in the business. I thought I would be a natural leader, and I was doing recruiting and hiring, but I don't know, something was missing. And so when I was interviewing all of these women, I started seeing another way of leading that wasn't aggressive, that was very collaborative, that was not about, this is what you did wrong and I want you to fix it because this is how it's done right. It was flipping the conversation to, instead of saying, you did this wrong, do it right, this is how it's supposed to be done, I would say, this is what I really liked about what you did, and this is what I would love to see you do more of. And that little tiny switch in how I would ask things of other people to get what I wanted resonated with exactly how I wanted to be as a leader. I wanted to empower other people. I wanted to make them feel good. And I wasn't really making people feel good in this kind of very dominated, aggressive way of leading. And so it just opened my eyes that maybe, my nature was leading in a different way, but I grew up in an environment that was so male dominated. I had adopted all these other leadership styles, and they worked in some regards as far as sales go, as far as closing deals, as far as that goes. But when it comes to building and being a strong executive, a strong leader, it didn't work for me. And so when I learned from all these interviews and I saw all these different ways of leading that felt still strong, but felt more aligned with my natural leadership capabilities, that made me feel good when I left at the end of the day, that's when I knew that this is what was missing. This is why we haven't made it as women, because only 5% of CEOs are women, only 14% of executives are female. So there's not that many to see. And a lot of them, again, have had to, adapt to their environments, that maybe they're not leading how maybe they would have, if they had more women around them. And so that's what our program is all about, is showing this other way of leading. And I hope you don't mind that long story. I see some questions that I'm going to get to. But I always get that backstory, and I just wanted to share that with you because it has been that journey that has gotten Women Evolution where it is today, and why I really believe it's tangible strategies from other successful female executives who are leading in a way that just might help you to see a different way of doing skills that you've done before, and how we can use maybe not so aggressive ways of leading that can still get the result, maybe even faster, maybe even make it in a way that you are that makes you happier at work, because it's more aligned with who you are naturally. And I'm excited to learn more about you and what's working and what's not. So so first question is in regards to lesson 1. And we've gotten this email from a couple people. I see this also in the chat function. So, the question is in the videos, Marina talks about how she was able to integrate work life and her personal life. And the way she was able to do it was she had the deep conversation with her significant other, her spouse, about where their job paths were going. And Marina looked like she was going to be going towards executive level, which ultimately she's a senior VP at a Fortune 1000 global technology company. But at the time she wasn't. She was just an emerging female leader. And her husband was working in sales and was traveling all over and was kind of an independent contractor. And when they talked about who had the most, kind of excitement or potential or passion, it really looked like, because they were having kids too, they had 2 kids within a 3-year time frame, and so what was working before was no longer working, and everything kind of threw up in the air, and it was decided that her husband would take the next 5 years in just, because he could do his job from home. He didn't have to travel as much. He could change some things to be able to work from home. And he did, and she stayed in the corporate path. And that was, they said, we'll do this for 5 years and we'll see how it goes. And 5 years turned into, now their kids are in college, and it just worked for them. And so I get a lot of pushback because not everybody has a significant other that can stay at home. And, what are other ways that people have done it? And, I've done a lot of interviews. I've interviewed over 150 executives. And I will tell you that the ones that have children are doing it with a spouse that stays at home, or they have a nanny, or their kid is in daycare full time, or their kids are in daycare, or they have a family support system that their kids are staying with their family or picking them up from school. And so, I don't really think it's possible to have children and maintain your career and stay at home full time. I mean, I haven't really met that many people who have been able to do that. I mean, I have no idea how single parents do this, because, then, that's a whole other level. I mean, it's this amazing situation that how they're able to work and take care of kids. And I know they can't, you have to have some sort of support system there. So, for me personally, I have a nanny. I have a nanny 4 days a week who comes to the house, and I didn't have a nanny from day one. For me, for the very first 6 weeks, I stayed home. I wanted to stay home. My husband stayed home for the first 2 weeks. My mom stayed with us and helped us transition and figure out, how do you have a baby? What does this mean every day? And also so that I could heal as well, after having the baby. And and friends and family brought food and all of those things. And then after 6 weeks, and I worked when she napped. And then after 6 weeks, I was ready. I really was craving getting back into women evolution and get going with, a lot of the ideas and projects that I was working on. And so we had deep conversations months in advance we do have, my family lives in Oklahoma. My husband's family, Chris, his family happens to live here in town, and he has a mom and he has a stepmom. And so we asked if one of them would take 1 day a week to watch the kids, so I could go to work. So I worked 3 days a week. Then one day, one grandma watched the baby while I went to work, and I pumped at work. I breastfed till for 2 years, so I pumped all the time. Another grandmother babysat another day, and then one day, Chris, my husband, took off. So he worked 4 days a week and took 1 day off, which he was able to do because he is in the financial planning industry. That's how we met. And he can maneuver his schedule to not have clients that day. And he worked, and he stayed home with the baby 1 day a week. And I got 2 days of being a stay-at-home mom and hanging out with my friends and just only focusing on that. And I got 3 days of work. And that was exactly what I did for 6 months. And then after 6 months, I was ready for more. And that's when we decided to look for a nanny. That and the fact that the grandparents were like, okay, there's a reason why we can't have kids at this time at our age. And she was already crawling and was just getting more energy and required more. And they were like, we're done. So we had to, we're in a position now that we were able to afford a nanny. And so I always looked at how much money do I make per hour? And when I calculate that, how much does it cost to have a nanny per hour? And our nanny costs, she's at $16 an hour. And she does light cooking and she does our laundry. And so I'm able to go to work and I make more than $16 an hour. And I love what I do. I'm passionate about what I do. And so I was able to say, okay, if what I do, I love and I'm passionate about, and if I'm able to make equal money or more, then, and I'm still feeling like I'm able to be a mom, and I'm feeling that part of me and be with my stay-at-home mom friend, but I'm able to go to work and have the, be able to work with other women to help support them as they grow, and be able for it to be either a financial wash or to still be ahead with the amount of money that we make, then for me, that was what was right for me. And so for me, then coming from a finance, maybe it's because I come from, a financial background, it's always about, what do I make per hour and what am I outputting to have those services? So for me to be able to come home at night and for there to be food made and the laundry be done, and when I come home, even though I only get to hang out with her for an hour and a half before I put her to bed, for me, that's an hour and a half of quality time where my phone is away. I'm not answering phone calls. I'm not checking emails. I just devoted to her. And when she goes to bed, if I want to work, I can. Whatever I want to do then, if I want to work out, I have that time built in. So I get my morning time with her, and then I go to work and I do what I love, and then I come home and I get that uninterrupted time, and I'm not like stressing about the fact that the sink is filled with dishes and there's 6 months worth of laundry to be done. So for me, that works for me. And, if this is California, it's probably, I don't know how much nannies cost in other places, but I live in a pretty expensive city. So I think that's doable for a lot of people, but that's what works for me. I have other families that, they only get 2 weeks and then they have to go back to work. And, some hopefully now get to extend that out to 6 weeks, but there also was paid family leave. I was able to, go and get disability from the state because I pay into that, and I was able to make a nice chunk of money that also supplemented our income during those times, the first 6 weeks when I was taking off. So, I got money from the state, I had family support, and it grew from there. And so now to this day, I have a nanny 4 days a week. I take Fridays off. And I work Saturdays, but my husband takes off Saturdays and stays home with her. And, that works. And as long as I feel like I'm in balance there, that's what works for me right now. We want another kid, hopefully planning on that soon. So I'm sure that that's going to change. So we'll see. We'll see how that happens. But I've only got one at this time. So I'd love to hear more about, if you have any other questions, feel free and chime in or add in the chat. But that kind of digs deeper into, where I'm at right now in regards to integrating work life and personal life. Because I know for Jennifer, she was working 80 hours a week, working weekends. She didn't have kids yet, but she still wanted work-life balance. It's not about just having kids is when you get balance or when you should ask for it. You need to have that in advance. And so she was becoming resentful. She was getting upset. She was stressed out, overworked, working vacations. And, I know that we all have been there before because this just is in our nature to want to give as much as we can. And there's always 80,000 projects at work going on at one time. So there's always work to be done. So it's about setting boundaries and discovering, what it is that we need to work on. So as far as the program is concerned in the next lesson, it really dives deep into this idea of owning and recognizing what our values are. And our values, they're not stagnant. They're not set one time and they're your same values for the rest of your life. They change. I do this exercise because I do it every time I speak live to an audience. I do the exercise that's in the workbook on determining what your core values are. So I want to dive into that piece because it's a huge part of lesson 2 and 3 in the Owning Your Purpose module. So it's about knowing what your core. I'm going to look at my being self-aware is lesson 2. So being self-aware is recognizing what are my values. Is the job that I'm doing right now in alignment with those values? Is this the job that really fits who you are? Are these the people who you want to spend sometimes more with than you do your own family? And is the work that you're doing every day at work in alignment with your values? And so in order to even be able to start this alignment exercise, we have to first and foremost know what our core values are. So if you haven't done the program in a while, let's do that exercise right now. So I'm going to pull up the, and I'm going to share that screen because I think I have it up right over here. So let's see if I can find it quickly. Okay, where is it at? There you are. Okay, let me pull it up for you. Almost, I promise, I think I found it. Where are you at? I didn't find it. Where is it? Is that it? No. Wow, where are you at? It's right here. Come on, Zoom. Don't fail me now. My inbox, my desktop. Ah, there you are. It finally pulled up. Okay. So here is the module on owning your purpose. So we're going to scroll through this and go through, you know, obviously the lesson 2 is on being self-aware. So these are about some of the rules. About trying to make quality decisions that are in alignment with and grounded in self-awareness of knowing, living the life that you want to live. So some suggestions on how to do that and some questions to ask yourself. You know, what do I visualize my life looking like in the future? How do I feel? How do I want to spend my time? What is the legacy that I want to leave behind? And you know, what does an ideal day look like for me? And, you know, having those deep questions within yourself answered first is going to help give you an idea of where you want to spend your time. And then we could go through this exercise right here on what are your core values. So, you know, you can read this first top part if you haven't read it in a while, but we really truly believe that we're all happier and more fulfilled when our life and our work align with our values. And so assessing our values make all of our decisions better, because when we know what our core values are, then we can look at, you know, what are the work that we're doing on? Does this project, is this going to make me feel happy? Is it going to make me feel like I'm working on something that's truly aligned with who I am? And our higher purpose is informed by our values. So if we're feeling, you know, and like I said, our values aren't static, so they're going to change over time. So if you haven't done this in a while, do it again and see if they've changed. Mine change almost every month. There's like one I change that's a little bit different depending on what I'm working on at that time, and that's okay. So I do this exercise in the new year. I do it once a year, and then, like I said, I present this all the time, so I always do it live as well to see what will I click this time. So if we're feeling exhausted, if we're feeling overworked, bored, frustrated, it's probably because we're working on projects that aren't in alignment with our values. So step 1 is determine your core values. The very first thing that we have to do is we go through this list and we literally just check every box that resonates with our with who we think we are, or what's important to us that resonates with you. We don't overthink it, and we just check boxes, even if they may be similar. So collaboration is definitely something that I love working on, being creative. Innovation, I already know that one, so I'm going to check that box. Diversity. You know, it's not that these other values aren't things that I value or that I care about. I really look for things that, you know, when I get home at the end of the day, when I look back at what really is the core of who I am and why I do the things that I do. It's because of certain of areas. And some of these are things that, you know, are things I have to work on a little bit. Some of the ones that are really easy for me, sometimes I don't check those boxes because, you know, I already know that I'm going to do those in my sleep. But some of these are ones that I have to work on. So happiness and my health, you know, I feel like I go through these waves with my health. I go through like 2 weeks where I'm crushing it and I feel great, but I've, you know, dropped some other things off. And then, you know, so I start working on other projects heavily because I've got a deadline. I need to get those done. And then guess what happens? I stop working out. I stop meditating. I stop doing all of these things that really help me out. And then I've got to go back because then I get out of alignment and physically out of alignment because I feel it in my bones when I don't feel good, when I'm not healthy. And so, you know, taking care of myself is a huge part of my core values. And, you know, some people are like, well, does that align with your work or not? And I'm like, well, I do my best work when I feel strong. So this is a core value of mine. And there's a lot of organizations, if that's a core value of yours, there's a lot of organizations who value those same things. And, you know, that may be something that you look for, to being a part of teams who maybe do health challenges together, or, you know, who like to talk about, you know, when you go to lunch, that you talk about, you know, hey, let's go for a walk around the block, you know, or let's go to the gym tonight after the kids are asleep, or, you know, that's a part of what you do. So does it mean that you have to work on a project that's, you know, about mindfulness? Not necessarily. So, you know, you don't have two sets of values. Okay. There's not a personal set of values and a business set of values. They're one and the same. And those two things have to overlap in order for us to integrate our work life and personal life. So don't look at these as two separate lists. So you just keep going through this list and you just click on everything that resonates with you. And after we go through this list, if there's any that for some reason come to your mind and they're not on this list, then you could just write them in. You can, you know, this isn't like an exclusive list of every value that can be there. So feel free and check whatever box. So once you've just checked every box you possibly can, now you have to narrow it down to your top 5 core values. Okay? You can only pick 5. All right? And so you just type them in here when once you're done. So thoughtfulness is definitely a core value of mine. Diversity, that's a new one for me. I've really stepped into really being super thoughtful around having a diversity of thought around me and the teams that I build, and making sure that I'm not hiring people or working with people who are clones of myself. Although they're the easiest people to hire, that's not what's going to help me be able to serve the diverse population of women and men that we serve. So this is definitely a new value that has really kind of stepped up to the plate. Balance has always been a core value of mine. Innovation, I have to, you know, what I love about what I do is that hasn't been done before, that it's innovative, that it's exciting and new. And so, and let's see, what's my 5th one today? Because this may change. Leadership, absolutely. That's the core of who I am. Just trying to be the best that I can possibly be to others and to help them rise with me. So these are my core values. And now that I know them, it feels pretty good, you know? So let's see what some other people's, you know, put in the chat function what your core values are. I'm going to pull up the chat box and see what some of you are saying. So integrity, absolutely. not that integrity is not a core value of mine, but, for some it's a non-negotiable. And it's what they look for in their relationships. It's what they look for when you're doing things. It's an incredible value to have. Charity. If charity is a value of yours and you're not doing anything philanthropic in your career right now, I would probably not feel very good. There would be something that was missing. And so if that's a value of mine, and I am trying to think about what I'm spending my time on, and none of it is giving back to a certain, one or more organizations, then, that would make me unhappy, right? That would make me feel like I'm not spending time on things that I really love and that fuel me. So, how can we add that back in? Let's see, some of the other ones is, that's a good one, cleverness, kindness, stability, teamwork. Awesome. Thank you for sharing those. And it looks like some of you were kind of surprised with what came up and are proud of that. Very cool. Thank you for going through this exercise with me. So now that we know our top 5 values, now we have to take a long lens and we have to examine all of our current projects and assess the percentage of time that we are aligned with our values. So this is going to take more than what we're going to do right here. But really, if you need to move on past this spreadsheet and not just here, then write it down. But what we have to do here in lesson 3 is do the alignment exercise. And if you remember from the videos, this is a suggestion from Marina, and it is critical to spend time on things that you really love. And when Jennifer did this analysis of herself and she wrote out all the projects that she's working on currently, she's also wrote out what are the projects that seem to be the most important to the organization at that time. And she looks at her core values, and she looks at her core values in alignment to the company's core values, to the company's top projects, and to the projects that she's currently working on, and seeing if there's a misalignment in any one of those places. And so what she saw is that 50% of the time she was working on things that were in alignment. But that meant that she was spending 50% of her time, half of her time, on things that were not in alignment with her values. And that was kind of a big eye-opening situation for her, because she was feeling overworked and stressed and not appreciated and undervalued. And that's a huge indication of why that's happening. And so she had to go in. So I want to know, have you done this yet? Who here is spending more than half their time on things, half their time or more on things that are not in alignment with your values? Yeah. Most people. It's interesting, right? Most of you have hopefully done this exercise before, and hopefully you've done some work on it. But now, more projects get stacked on, and maybe a lot of things have changed. Maybe your position has changed. Maybe your company has changed. Maybe you have a new leadership team. Maybe you've had a complete change, and now you're in a totally new department, and everything is completely different. So it's time to do this analysis again. And when we see this misalignment, now it's around how can we get back in alignment now that we've done this analysis of our values? And in order to do that, we have to look at, out of the projects that are the most important for the company, what are the top, 3 or 4 that you really think that, based upon your values, based upon your unique background, that you could really bring immense value? And going to your manager and having this conversation of saying, I really, first you have to schedule this meeting. So you need to be able to email your manager or speak to your manager at a time where it's not during performance review time and they're overworked and stressed. Maybe you have a weekly meeting with your manager already, or a quarterly meeting, or whatever it may be. Maybe it's coming up soon. If it's nothing is coming up soon, then you should schedule a meeting with them and say, hey, I'd really like to sit down with you and go through my career development plan. And I'd like to discuss, areas that I'd really love to work on with you. Can we schedule, 20 minutes to go over that? And schedule that time with them. It's your responsibility to schedule this meeting. They're not going to come to you, so you have to be the one to lead it. And when you sit down with them, say, I've had an opportunity to really dig into what I've loved working on in this last year or two or couple months, and what I see are the top priorities for the organization. Are these still the top priorities for you and our team and for the organization? And here is what I've loved doing the most of, and I'd like to work on more projects like this. Do you have any other projects in the pipeline that I should know about? And start it from a positive place, right? You're having this conversation first and foremost about what can you do more of, right? Not, this is what I hate doing, can we get rid of that? It's like, this is what I love doing, I'd love to do more of this, and let's do that. And then after you've had that conversation, now you can say, here are things and projects that, I realized I didn't, I really saw maybe somebody else really do a better job at, or, I thought I was going to do or have an impact here and it maybe wasn't as impactful as I thought it would be, or it's really been a huge stress on me. Is there anybody on the team who loves these kinds of projects? Are there any way that we can move some of that work over to somebody else? And, just having this open dialogue with them. And the worst that can possibly happen is them say, not at this time. We don't have anybody, we're all overworked and nobody wants to do it. And so you're just at the same place as you were before, but now you're very clear on what you want. And so if that doesn't happen at that moment, now you can have a follow-up conversation and say, can we discuss some movement in the projects that I'm working on moving forward? Like if something comes up, can you let me know? Or maybe at our next performance review, can we look at something that would be more in alignment with what we talked about here today? And just get a gauge of where they're at, because there's got to be a reason why. And if we're creating diverse teams, there have to be other people who maybe really love doing this kind of work and really, it doesn't stress them out and overwhelm them. And maybe you can swap some projects here. And if you're able to take one or two things off the table that maybe aren't a top priority for the organization and you don't really enjoy doing them, maybe we can push those down the list and wait until and be able to get something else on. So it worked for Jennifer. I know it's worked for a lot of you. I'm seeing that, you were able to make some changes. I have seen some managers say, oh, that would be great in a perfect world if we could just get rid of all the things we don't like and only do things we love. When that happens, what I'm thinking is that the manager probably was caught off guard. My question is, are they aware of your participation in this program? Do they know that you're going through a program that's having you do this type of assessment? Because if they're aware of it, then they're going to have knowledge that you're going to be doing an exercise like this and will be open to this conversation and won't kind of shut it down. So if you're seeing that, then it's probably because they're unaware. You maybe caught them at the wrong time. And if it's none of those things, then maybe there's a larger issue with the manager, and maybe we should look at, is this department or is there this manager someone that you want to continue underneath? Because if they're not able to work with you on any of this, then that's a mismatch, right? And that deserves digging further in. And but for most, if you can do it at the right time, at the right place, and they're aware. So if your manager is not aware of your participation, then you should throughout this process, you will have received the Women Evolution Manager's Guide. And if you haven't, email me, Shavon at womenevolution.com, and I will email it to you directly, because we only rolled it out at the end of 2015. It was brand new at the beginning of 2016 because we learned it from you. You were saying, look, I tried to have this conversation with my boss, and they really shut it down. And the only reason why I can see that happening is because maybe they felt threatened by the material. They were caught off guard. Who's trying to teach my people about leading? And I'm their manager. That's my role. And that's, it felt like more of a defensive response. And so our best way of approaching that is creating a manager's guide. And this manager's guide is an additional resource to you. And again, email me, Shavon at womenevolution.com, and you can, I'll email it directly to you. And it is, it's a short 2-page overview of what the Women Evolution program is, what you can expect from people who go through the program. And it gives them a high-level, easily digestible overview of each one of the modules and some of the core principles and how they can support you through each one of the modules. So it's designed for you to say, hey, if your manager happens to not know about it, you can send them an email and say, hey, I want you to know that I'm going through this program, that I really would love to talk to you at some point, maybe midway through the program or at the end, about my career development plan. And I just wanted to give you a heads up about this program so that we could talk about it from time to time and bring them in. We don't want to catch them off guard with this program. Until this program is large scale within an organization, there's going to be some holes in management of who are just, unfortunately, or maybe missed a meeting where it was talked about that you were going to go through this program, or whatever it may be. So put that back in your control and leverage the manager's guide to inform your manager of your participation. And then that will make it easier for you to have these important conversations that you need to have throughout this entire process. And so having alignment between your work and what you do is critical to your success. So leverage the resources that you have. So I don't see any questions right now in regards to this. I see some more for the some more of the lessons that we're going to get to here in a minute. So that goes through lessons 1 through 3. And lesson 4 is in regards to having a support system. Now, if you haven't watched the video for this in a long time between Jennifer and Marina, I really urge you to watch it again, because I almost tear up every time I watch it. I get goosebumps. This was hands down the pivotal moment in Jennifer's growth through the Women Evolution Mentoring Program, was when she had to ask for support from her work colleagues when she had a very personal event happen to her. And in the video, you hear Marina talk about how she leveraged her work family during a time when her sister was diagnosed with cancer. And it's such a real experience. We have all had, these moments where what happens at home, it could be even, it doesn't have to be cancer or a death of a grandmother like it was for Jennifer. I mean, sometimes it's just the loss of a pet, or, a million other things that can happen. And, a lot of times we feel like we have to have this very big distinction between who we are at home and who we are at work. But when these things come up where, like, you might shed a tear or cry uncontrollably, then, those are moments where we really need to rely on people at work so they can understand that you're going through something. And I know for me, it happened when I was in an elevator, and I always had this guy that worked across the hall from us that we always happened to come to work at the same time, and we would always chit chat. And I went to work one day, and I had gotten sick for the 17th time, and I was just fed up and exhausted. And I came in and he asked me how I was doing, and I said, to be honest, not good. I'm really I'm sick. I get sick all the time. And he said, you know what? That used to happen to me all the time. And I actually started seeing a chiropractor who, I haven't been sick in over a year. And I'm like, what? From going to a chiropractor? Like, those two things don't align with me. And so, he ended up introducing me to his chiropractor. And to this day, like, I think I've been going to him for like 8 years. I've never had bronchitis again. There's a million other reasons why, but that was the beginning of my health journey. Was, instead of saying everything's good, I'm good, whatever, I'm just honest. And it's amazing because this guy finally opened up to me, and that was, a step towards me going towards finding this balance that I so desperately needed. Because at that time I didn't have kids, I wasn't married yet, I was just overworked and stressed, and I needed something, and this guy gave me that little bit of information that I needed. So back to the story of Jennifer and Marina, because I really want to tell you this because it was so incredible. So Jennifer's grandmother died 2 weeks into their mentoring program starting. And Marina told her, look, when you go to, because Jennifer's biggest challenge at work was that she felt like her colleagues were super aggressive, that she had nothing in common with them, and she did not like going to work. And so this happened, and Marina's like, you got to open up. You've got to tell them. And she normally would never have opened up to her colleagues because, again, she thought she had nothing in common with them. But in this moment, she decided that she would. And when she did, you can watch the video, they immediately were supportive. They started talking about, things that happened in their lives in regards to loss, and it really bonded them in that moment. And the biggest thing that happened was that Jennifer, who had this thought that her work colleagues she had nothing in common with them, now that she did, now instead of them feeling like her aggressive, combative, colleagues, they were now on her side. When she would go into her next board meeting or a sales call, she was now going with her allies. And that shift in mindset for her was like, wow, if I can do one thing, and all that thing was being vulnerable at the right place at the right time. She didn't tell this in a board meeting in front of everybody. She did it privately, one-on-one, when the opportunity came up and it was appropriate to tell them about what was going on with her personally. And so because she did that and she trusted them, her mind, she had a 180 flip right then and there. And she said, if this small thing can have such a huge impact, what else can I do differently? What else can I try? And from that point on, she implemented every single strategy that we're providing to you in this program and that Marina suggests in the videos. And that's all she did. And they worked via Skype. They didn't work in person. They worked via Skype, 1 hour a month for 6 months. And that's all it took. And she just opened up her eyes. And if you've gotten through all the videos, you can see it, towards the end of our filming that we did versus the beginning, you can see Jennifer's confidence in her own ability and where she wanted to go was a complete 180. And I remember filming because we were filming and I was having her retell situations, but she was a different person. And so I was trying to get her to remember what it was like when she felt like she was alone, that she felt like she had no support. And it was like, really? I kind of don't really remember that anymore. And so and I had to remind her of these stories that I had rewatched during their Skype sessions, because I'm like, remember that time? Oh yeah, okay, yeah. And then she would have to like dig into that emotion to be able to tell it for you on film. And so it really is incredible how these small things can have a huge impact. So I remember talking about this at Boeing back in February of 2015. It was my very first Obviously Boeing is a huge company, large presentation to a room. I think there was probably at least 150 people in the room. And I told them this story, and the women raised their hand. And this is Boeing, mind you, and very, very kind of old school, very corporate to the nth degree. And they raised their hand and they were like, there's no way. I have been taught my whole life to not show emotion at work, to never bring my personal life in. And you're telling me to do that. And, you know, they were kind of flabbergasted when I told them this. And, you know, again, it's all about the right place at the right time. Okay. This is not turn on the waterworks and do it all the time. But when something is so critical that you have to be able to lean on your work family too. And the support system is crucial. And so Marina talks about, how do we develop a support system? Now, you can open up when something happens, but maybe you haven't had any huge thing that you really need to talk about, but you really still feel disconnected with your colleagues. Or so Marina's suggestion, and it's one of the best things that we can possibly do, is to, let's see if I can see any of these, is to talk with going to each department and talking to the department heads and just asking them about their work. What it is that they do every day. It's not about you. You're going out to learn about your colleagues. And what will happen is they ultimately will ask about you, but you are going out to meet with the department heads, learn about how you can help support them better, start getting a better understanding of the work you do and how it overlaps with the work you do and how you can make their job easier, and making yourself a person of influence. And you do that by getting to know who you're working with and asking them questions. And if you see people in your office who just like totally crushed it in a sales call, or that you were on a big group conference call and they really presented in a way that you've never seen before and everybody was like, oh wow, and just really loved it. When you see things that are like, gosh, I really would love to know how they did that, those are those moments where that's your point of connection to them. That's when you go up to them after their meeting and you're like, hey, I just want you to say you rocked it in there. And I love that. Can we go get a cup of coffee? Can I buy you a cup of coffee? I'd love to learn more about how you prepared for that, how you were able to, make your slides as good as you did, or how you were able to get buy-in from, your other coworkers, or how you knew to address that challenge in that way. Whatever it is, like, go in and thank them and appreciate their work and see how you can learn from them. And that is how we build a support system at work. It's through opening up when something really powerful happens to us and trust that our colleagues will be there for you. Not all of them will probably be there for you, but the ones that do, you hold on and you don't let them go. And then you dig in to get to know the people who you really think are influential, who are doing really wonderful things. And so those are how you're going to be able to create the best support system you possibly can. And the final lesson is really about embracing change. And because the reason is that when you start doing all of these things are going to start shifting for you. When you start spending more time on things that you love, when you start having these complicated conversations with your manager and being really honest with yourself and your family of what your needs are, and at work of, you're going to start getting recognition. You're going to start developing relationships. There's going to be a lot of change that's going to happen. And, be ready to embrace that change, enjoy it, realize that it's happening for a reason, and really reflect on times. If you're going through a divorce, if you're going through a miscarriage, let me tell you, when I miscarried for the first time, I've miscarried a couple times. When I miscarried my very first time, I had to get up the next day and do my very first presentation to 50 people, my very first. And I cried all whole day the day before. I cried all morning. I couldn't cancel this. I probably should have. But it was the only thing that was keeping my head from going off the deep end and thinking about the loss. The only thing that got me up off the ground was that I had this obligation and that I had this opportunity to present to a huge group of people. And if I didn't have the support system around me, because trust me, I had plenty of support system that said, listen, if you need to cancel, everyone's going to understand. Don't worry, they're going to be there. But I knew inside of me that this was my opportunity that I needed to do, and I felt right about it. And what was the biggest thing for me was at the very beginning of my presentation, one of my ways of relating to the audience was talking about how I was pregnant. And I chose in that session to still say that I was, because even I hadn't technically miscarried yet. I had just found out the day before that there wasn't a heartbeat. And, but I wasn't a full miscarriage yet. And so, I had this like tiny glimmer of hope that the baby's heart would start beating again. And so I wanted to live that. And so I went in the next day and I still said that I was, and everybody really connected with me, and it was what opened it up. And, unfortunately I ended up miscarrying, a week later, but, I had to have a support system in place to do that. I had to trust people with my story. I had to open up, to that, because I can tell you I am not alone. In the miscarriage thing. I mean, I think probably 50% of people have probably gone through something like that. So even though it's like the most private thing that nobody ever really shares or talks about, but, for me, that was what I chose to do. And I felt good. I felt like that was what was right for me at that time. So, as we go through these, we have to reflect about what's really the worst that can happen if we do these things, and embrace it, enjoy it, and maybe that means it's going to change who we hang out with every day. Because if we're not getting the support system that we need to find that right support system, and that can be really scary. And so, I definitely don't hang out with some friends now, not because they're bad people, but because I'm not getting from them what I need anymore from where I'm at today. And so, that's okay. My circle is smaller, but it is so powerful. And I can easily spot when I need to find something else, and I need to look for something else. And I look for that in other people. And when I see it, I immediately go to them and I'm like, you've got what I'm looking for. Can I take you to lunch? I really would love to learn more. And we always end up collaborating and working together, which goes back to my core value of collaboration. And so all of this works together. So it's been a little bit over an hour. I want to thank you for spending your time with me. We're doing our very first live Q&A session. I'm going to do another one in 2 weeks, and I'm going to dive into the Owning Your Voice module. And so I'm super excited, and I hope this gives you so much more than to provide an access to me. And I look forward to, if you've got any suggestions on how I can run this any differently, then I'm all ears, because like I said, this was number one. So I'm excited. Thank you for staying with me, and I'll get this session is recorded. I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick. So this session is recorded. It's going to be available for playback. You can watch it at any time. Thank you so much. And please, please, please join the private Facebook group if you haven't already. And it's going to be where I'm going to make announcements of when the next sessions are. I like to do polls of what time works really well for you. I'm still trying to figure out that timing so we can get more and more people here live. And whatever else you think that would be that would help you, I am here to support you in that journey. And thank you so much. I'll see you in 2 weeks for our next live Q&A. All right, thanks. Bye-bye.